Welcome, everybody, to The Bottom Line. So thankful for your support. Please go in and like and subscribe, because when you do, you help us with this thing called the algorithm that the overlords control and try and censor and make sure people don't see good things like you're going to see today. So please like and subscribe, share the content, and always go to helpjbm.org and stand with us in the fight against human trafficking. A lot of what we discuss on the show is tethered to or circles the world that feeds human trafficking, puts children at risk, and really just frankly breaks down our culture. It's called The Bottom Line because we get to the bottom line. Thank you so much. I want to start the show with thanking Patriot Mobile. Thank you, Patriot Mobile. It's the only Christian conservative cell phone provider in the United States. Glenn Story and the guys at Patriot Mobile and the girls at Patriot Mobile are going to give you excellent service. They've got a special called Every Friday Matters. It's not Friday, but it still counts today. So please check it out. Go to patriotmobile.com, mention The Bottom Line, or patriotmobile.com/the bottom line, and you'll get a special deal. If you're worried about cell phone service, they use all the major carriers' towers. You're not going to see a difference. I'm on it. I love it. I got 5G in areas where I didn't have 5G on Verizon. And I don't have to worry that the money I pay to Verizon is going to Planned Parenthood and to organizations that do not believe what I believe. With Patriot Mobile, it's going to Judeo-Christian centered organizations. They've been to the border with us. They've literally been with us on rescue missions. I've watched them feed the poor and the homeless with us. So check out patriotmobile.com. It's because of sponsors like them that we can bring you the show. So thank you so much to Patriot Mobile. Steve and Matthew, welcome. Steve Burris, Matthew Easter, Matthew in the hat. Steve, that looks like he potentially formerly works for an agency.
Maybe.
Welcome to The Bottom Line.
It's a secret.
Thank you.
I don't know.
Won't be a secret too long.
No, not too long. But welcome, guys, to The Bottom Line, and thank you for your heart. And you've come to the ministry. You've joined in prayer meetings and breakfast meetings, and you've got a heart to what I think do something really special in a very unique time. We are going to tackle some subjects today that's tough for people to consume, but they grapple with it because I don't know that they get truth around this a lot. And then if they get truth, it's highly censored. It's redacted. They're lied to and fleeced. And so I want to jump right in and then want to go back a little bit into history if I could. But we are going to talk about how do we keep schools safe?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And how do we keep schools safe by still being lovers of the Constitution, lovers of our amendments, especially our Second Amendment, the right to defend and protect our families, sound, intellectually honest conversations about just what's the state of the nation from that regard. But I do want to get into your history a little bit. Maybe Steve first.
Sure.
Just the desire to serve. Where did that start?
My dad was a pastor, and I kind of grew up in the church, and we were always doing various service things, helping out organizations, and all that kind of stuff, and stuff through the church. And then as I went through college and everything, I had an interest in doing law enforcement or maybe medicine. I had a lot of scattered interests, and I ended up becoming an EMT and working as an EMT on an ambulance for about 6 months before I got hired by the Border Patrol, and went from Chicago, Illinois to South Texas to Brownsville.
Oh my goodness!
And when I got my orders,
all the way down, past Mexico, actually. Right. Okay, because
pretty much it's kind of like northern occupied Mexico.
Exactly.
Yeah, El Paso is north of Brownsville.
Exactly.
So trying to explain the distances to people who aren't familiar with Texas
it's huge.
Difficult. Yeah, but it was eye opening. We started. I was a kid, and
what year was this?
1996.
So this is
97.
This is under
Clinton.
Clinton.
Yeah.
That's right. Yes.
January 8th, 1997 was my EOD date.
Okay.
And so I did about 3 years in the Border Patrol. I was part of the medical team that got stood up there. in the Brownsville sector. All that stuff has since morphed into Borstar and some other technical organizations that have gotten very good at finding people out in the boonies that are in need of help and getting the help to them. And then, after a couple of years in the Border Patrol, I started looking at other federal agencies and I actually applied to DEA and to the Secret Service at the same time. Never, ever applied to 2 1811 jobs at the same time. There's a lot of work going into both things at the same time. Yeah. So I figured I would get the DEA job, and Secret Service was my long shot. And it went exactly the opposite. And I ended up in the Secret Service and spent the next 22 years in the Secret Service until I retired in January of 22. So,
thank you for your service.
Thank you.
I want to get to the Secret Service, but because of what we're dealing with the border at the moment, I do, in the show today, want to get your lens, just recall memory to those years under Clinton and kind of what the climate was on the border, what some of the policies were back then, the belief systems and that kind of stuff. But right before we get there, Matthew, your history, kind of similar. What does that look like?
Yeah, so I got my certificate in therapeutic intervention back in 2007 and started working for a mental health facility for teens. Definitely not as cool of a background as Steve's, but it was more geared towards serving. And I'd always felt a calling to serve. And before I really had a relationship with Christ, and before I really had, a knowledge of my long-term purpose on this earth and what I was truly being called to do, there was always a desire to help serve in some capacity. And from there worked.
Was it always youth driven for you? Was it aimed towards youth mostly?
At first it was, and I think that's just from being a big brother my entire life. I have a little sister that's as young as 15 and another little sister that's as old as 33. So
it's quite big spread.
Yeah, mom wasn't done. Yeah. So and then I've got a little brother who's 24, and so my entire life, wanting to be someone for someone that I wish I had when I was going through my parents' divorce and
I can relate.
And a lot of those hardships growing up as a teenager. So I just knew that I wanted to be that person for other people. I wasn't sure really what the capacity was. It didn't really matter. So worked for a lot of different organizations, worked in the school system for a while. And then from there transitioned into working with adults with autism, learning disabilities, that kind of thing. And then worked at a homeless rehabilitation center, a gospel homeless rehabilitation center.
Yeah.
So from there, it was always serving, working for a church, serving in the church in some capacity, but just knowing that, once I had that pivotal point in my life where I realized what the purpose was for my life, and that's serving God. Mm-hmm. It was a pretty big change.
I like the combination here, and we're going to get into, you guys are an organization together, but I like the combination of this pastoral history here too, church, foundational church, but you go into not just the corporate world, you go into, the government,
right,
for many, many years.
Yep.
Right. And so that world, the blend between former government, corporate and private sector, and then the nonprofit world for the most part, I think is the two worlds that have to collide more, because the learn share, the information share in between, the collaboration there is really, it's cultural, and it makes, I believe, for a better blend of problem solving.
Yeah, absolutely.
And,
definitely.
It just does, and because we look at things through different lenses and angles. Steve, Secret Service, how do you encapsulate that to somebody that only understands the Secret Service through Born Identity and, and
through movies and television,
Minority Report and CSI Miami, and give us an overview. I mean, I deal with so many of these guys, but I want the audience to I want to reshape lenses a little bit. I want people to understand, because every day I hear, well, they should do this, and I go, that's not what they do. They should do. You know,
Right.
people will attribute things to the FBI on foreign territory, and I go, time out. You just, Secret Service.
So the best explanation that I give to people who are interested in joining the Secret Service is to put on your best suit, go out in your backyard, and stand there for 8 hours, regardless of what the weather is. You don't get a bathroom break. You don't get to do anything else. You hold that position, because 90% of what we really end up doing is static security like that, where you're holding a position, and there's a reason why you're at that post, and you can't leave that post. We try
because you're being depended on to secure
correct
that particular perimeter.
Right.
And
yeah, you have to hold that line.
You are trained to an exceptional level.
Yes.
To have both the wherewithal to acknowledge, recognize, and then execute when it's to execute.
Right. Yeah. There's,
so it's a hurry up and wait business for sure.
Very much. It's a lot of boredom, a lot of long hours, and punctuated by some moments of excitement. And if there's excitement at your site, it's usually not a good thing.
No,
we
don't really
we like
want
boring.
That. Yeah.
We want it to be very boring.
Did you have any? And I've got a really good number of friends, and there's a couple quirks will come in. Did you ever have some things within your regimen of getting ready for your day? I mean, I've got a couple friends that would label their socks left sock, right sock. These in the military, and it's like. It's a routine. Hey, we had a really good work. Some of my buddies had been on presidential detail, and they go, it was a really good week last week. And superstition creeps in. I'm going to do everything I did and don't change anything. And a lot of that stuff, because it's so routine, but it's also routine for purpose, because it's repetition after repetition after repetition. It's like being proficient in a firearm. It is absolutely muscle memory. Did any weird things ever come in for some of your buddies or you like that?
Oh, yeah. There's always characters in jobs like that. And there's guys that everything in their suitcase had to be individually sealed, and they were afraid of putting them in drawers because they didn't want to get bed bugs, which was a real concern because you're all over the world.
All over the world.
Yeah, all kinds of conditions. And, there's people that get very focused on that kind of stuff and very much into the minutia. For me, I tend to be a little on the ADHD side, and so it took me a little bit as a baby agent to figure it out, but I needed to have a routine of the night before I left on a trip. I had to set everything out, make sure I had everything was in its place, and then I returned everything to the right place in my backpack, and just finding my own way of dealing with that so I don't forget things.
And my bag is right here, right? And and I think that's drilled into us through different countries even, but in that space of military training. That backpack right now, I can go in that backpack and I will know if someone's been in it or not, but something moving. Right. I mean, I know where each pen goes, and it's not OCD. It's just it's dependable.
Right.
Preparation.
It's dependable. It's like, and I know husbands are going to relate to this. Your car keys are not where it's supposed to be because your wife drove and it doesn't matter to her, and you go, dang it, this is where it goes. It goes here.
Right.
But it's to another degree and level, because in that moment of unwanted tension, there's no time.
Right.
It's react, it's execute, it is all about the training. It's no think, it's just go. And so super high stress, long periods of time, because it's imminent. When?
Right.
What? And normally vast spaces in front of you, covering a lot of territory. I always say that, man, being on presidential detail on something like a campaign tour. Oh my gosh, it's insane. Or Trump walking into the UFC.
Right.
If anybody's ever been to anything with Trump or any president, it is. I mean, when we're in the Washington Mall for like March of Life, it's 4.5 hours of security clearance just to get people in, because the space is so vast.
Right.
So it's all that kind of stuff. I just think a lot in the movies. People, I'll see agents go, yeah, that's not quite.
No, it's not quite how
how we do it. Okay, I mean, there's some liberty taken there.
Right.
how did you get together? What's the focus now with this vast history of defend and protect? Your background in Secret Service, your history in serving the broken and the hurting, right? You come together with a focus on school safety.
Yeah, so I started working on this project right after Uvalde, and I think that was a big call to action for a lot of people, and it really highlighted the real issues with school safety that really weren't on the surface. So I started doing the research and development for how to open a nonprofit, because it's what was familiar to me. It's what I know, and it's where I learned leadership and how to build teams and do everything necessary to running a nonprofit, and came up with the idea of a community. So we're a 501c3 that focuses on community-funded security solutions for schools, while simultaneously providing veterans with employment opportunities. So I wanted a way to bridge the gap between local communities and schools, because there are plenty of resources out there. And having worked in the school system in the past, I know that there's a gross misallocation of funds.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
And it's
one of the departments within the federal government and state government where there is the most waste.
Yeah.
No question.
Absolutely. And just knowing that, I wanted a way to be able to laser focus funding to actually solving the issue. So I just started getting together with a lot of friends from church, a lot of friends that were, DEA, Secret Service, former, military special operations guys, and started putting our heads together to try and develop something. And I founded the organization and then opened up the security company under the ownership of the organization. And then after that time is when I actually met Steve through a mutual friend who he worked with in the Secret Service. So he, liked what I was doing and connected me with Steve. He and I, met up, and from there, he has such a heart for what we're doing. And I think that men of action and kingdom men attract other men of action and women of action. When there's a specific calling and you step up to the plate, I think that speaks volumes to other people, and they see that you're serious, you're onto something. And it wasn't really difficult to get the group of trainers that we have now. So Steve is one of our official instructors for the organization, and we'll get into that alongside Checkmate Training Group, who you met most of them. So Checkmate Training Group are our tactics guys. So all special operations guys. They're what they call themselves as the knuckle draggers of the group. So just big tough guys doing really cool stuff. We've got Ezra Penn, he was a former recon sniper. He's OGA right now, working contracting, doing security for a 3-letter agency. And we have Tyler Klickamp, who is he was a fire team leader for the Marines. He was an 0311. Then we have Justin Barron, who was 82nd Airborne, served with 3rd Special Forces Group in the Army, and just some of the best guys you could have in your corner that have a heart for training other people and protecting children, and really loved what we were doing. And Steve being the other portion of that, who just has a heart for solving this issue.
Stephen, when we look at all these different branches, of service, the Navy, the Marines, Army, Coast Guard, I think a branch that's highly underrated sometimes in the work they do is Coast Guard. I mean, they do a tremendous amount of work. The mentality shifts, the drive could be the same, but for you, stepping from Secret Service with that absolute meticulous, kind of routine and structure into this nonprofit world, right? Now, granted, it's training, but it's still, it is a different culture.
Oh, definitely, yes.
It's not federally funded with who knows what today, printing funny money and, whatever. It's a different animal. The nonprofit world's a different animal. Has that transition been for you, or has it been pretty seamless?
The whole transition out of protected federal job and opening my own company and then getting together with Matt, and it's been extremely eye-opening. I've been getting a deep education on business and marketing, and especially difficult is, and I think that some of the checkmate guides have some of the same issues where, we were in the background and you never really talked a lot about what you did or who you did it with or where you were. And then all of a sudden now you've got to market yourself and talk about all the things like, the day-to-day was, if you started patting yourself on your back too much, everybody that you worked with is like, oh, well, we did the exact same thing. So who are you?
Yeah, exactly.
It's just, it's trying to find ways that you stand out and that you do provide something different, and then trying to figure out how to monetize that. And it's been eye-opening, and it's fun, and it's frustrating. And seeing the nonprofit side where we've got to be going out and talking to people and selling our vision for what we can do in order to protect schools and in order to protect kids. Like, my youngest son's about to graduate from high school this year, so I won't have kids in that system anymore, in the K through 12 system. But he's going to go to college.
Yeah.
And we've seen
what is your open question? So the journey of protecting schools for us, and we've been in the protection of children for a long time. In trafficking, and that's in all sectors, in all walks of life, children are being exploited and trafficked, including the school system. But when the American school system, because I didn't go to school here, my siblings didn't go to school here, my wife did, and it's American born. But when it became personal school safety to our family, my wife is a writer, is when she was asked to study and then write and co-write the story of the Columbine shooting. And so first mass modern day recorded history American school shooting, Eric and Dylan, the two shooters. And I'll never forget, for over a period of a year, my wife got access to Rachel Joy Scott's diaries, the boys' writings, their diaries. So we had a unique lens into their lives, into what they said to one another and how they wrote, over a long period of time to go write this movie. And it was traumatizing, but for me it was, I also recognize, a lot of it blends over to how a predatory abuser becomes an abuser, where the mind goes, what are the triggers, what are the footholds for evil, Satan to come in and twist and mess with the mind. And so, but that shooting put us in a different awareness for school safety back then. Yeah. And that's long before Uvalde and Nashville, right? But I see the same tendencies. It's the same drivers. The psychoanalysis, the human behavioral science behind it, the conditions and the environment that feeds into it, and all these things. Back then, Eric, both these boys, extensively wrote about their addiction to aggressive gaming, and they planned through the games on even, moving through the school, their own school, and planning on who and who not, and then of course targeted Rachel, and so unbelievable, sobering situation when you then look at Uvalde and you really start looking on the metadata and behind the scenes and the things that people didn't want to talk about, and then you look at Nashville, and then you go, okay, why is the FBI not releasing a manifesto? And how politics play a role in this stuff, right? And I say all that to say is it has now created a very challenging environment, high need for keeping schools safe, very challenging environment to do so because politics is involved and stuff, so much red tape. So how are you navigating without sharing the Gusteau special recipe here, right? How do you navigate that space at the moment in school safety, and what are you hearing? Are you receiving support? Are you receiving pushback? Who's the pushback from?
It seems like we're not receiving as much support as you would think.
You would, that's my point.
Yeah.
Right.
There's, believe it or not, there's a lot of pride and egos that go into administration in the school systems, and even when it comes to people that are heads of security for ISDs.
Yeah, because these ISD now have their own police departments.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I have something to say about that in a minute. Yeah.
We do too. So it's difficult in the sense that, there's an obvious need that no one wants to address. And you can see all of the problems. You can see the perfect storm on the horizon, but we are so reactive in nature that we don't see the value in preventative measures.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big focus of what we want to provide schools is preventative training. And, that's why having Steve be a part of this project is so critical, because the Secret Service has been tracking shootings and school shootings and the behavior behind it for over 22 years.
Right.
So, I mean,
yes.
they're
probably with a heightened focus since
absolutely
Columbine.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. That was kind of the origin of the National Threat Assessment Center.
I knew that, but I wanted you to say it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was like, okay, this is different. Children from the school,
mm-hmm.
this is a different scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. And so they make all these reports public, so you can look at the data and you can know that it's unbiased. So that's where I try to point people towards, because they're all subject matter experts, but they have such a passion for prevention that it's a no-brainer. And Steve adds so much to this organization that without him, we would just be, okay, well, we're going to try and provide security officers that are highly trained, but what about the threat mitigation portion? So we take an 80-20 approach to school safety, where it's 80% preventative measures and 20% responsive. And under this model, we are going to provide preventative trainings to schools in emergency operations plans, active shooter plans. We're going to provide risk assessments to where we can identify the vulnerabilities and physical safety of a school campus, and even provide training and support for law enforcement agencies and ISD police departments.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a critical component to school safety, is bringing everyone together, not just school administrators, but also parents. Community, absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
And then
we need all eyes that are good eyes on point.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then we're going to have our own component of highly trained veterans that we hire through the security company that we'll be able to deploy into schools as armed security. And that
conversation, we've and I mentioned Columbine, and then we mentioned Uvalde, and then we mentioned Nashville, and Columbine came out of kind of left field. It was just like, and now, we're constantly at the Blaze talking about also, do not give the shooter attention. We don't mention their name. Don't go there. Don't mention their names, and because there is so many factors in our culture. There's a massive mental illness crisis.
Absolutely.
Untreated, undiagnosed, unrecognized mental illness crisis. There is a out of control opioid crisis. There is an over-prescribed, over-medicated culture where it's any day now. You can go to anybody and 3 doctors are prescribing medicine that's working against each other, and it's just it's a cocktail for disaster.
Yeah.
Right. And then the most important thing for me is it's a culture that is straight from God and from morality and from saying, hey, I need help. I need help here, versus, no, I got it all figured out, and it's my way or the highway. So the immediate approach, is it Texas schools first?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So the whole motivation behind me starting this organization was to protect my wife. She's a second grade teacher. She has such a heart for serving.
It's a good reason.
Her children. Oh yeah. It's I selfishly want to keep her alive and keep her safe. And
it's your job in God's eyes to
it's a duty.
Yeah.
It's a duty.
And as men, it's incumbent on us to always be looking how we can protect and provide for the physical, emotional, and spiritual protection for the people that we love and care about. And that was the number one reason why I wanted to start the organization. So, that being a primary motivator, really just kind of, it snowballed into a lot of other things. And at first it was just an approach to physical safety, and then not realizing the vast importance for threat mitigation.
Yeah.
And
we actually came to the conclusion at about the same time, separately, that we really needed to focus on that type of thing. And my background is I've spent a lot of time doing intelligence, which in the Secret Service isn't what everybody thinks. It's not being a spy and all that stuff. It's focused on threat mitigation, people who make threats to our protectees or have unusual interests and that kind of thing. And so it seems like a pretty good fit to take it and run and develop a program for our officers in schools.
Just on face value, right? On face value, this is America. I mean, we're the country with the most, opportunity, resources. The best constitution. There's no other nation with a governance system like. I mean, it's the best. But then something as simple as, hey, we're going to protect a high national asset this way.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not going to somehow, 40 years ago, not in 2024, meet with the education department and say, hey, this is also how we're going to protect the most vulnerable and kids. And in 2024, we're having a conversation about these systems not being in place.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then you scratch your head and you go, okay, somewhere, because they're in place when it doesn't even have to be Air Force One. They're in place when an NFL team drives through town.
Right.
So how is it, Steve, that the most vulnerable, our future children, somehow got relegated and missed the threat assessment, true threat assessment session of, hey guys, schools are vulnerable, way back. I'm not even talking now. Now, there's carnage.
Mm-hmm.
Before, pre-Columbine.
I think pre-Columbine, none of us, and I forget what year that was, but I think I was already working in the Border Patrol at the time, and pre-Columbine, nobody really believed like something like that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I remember as a kid in the 80s, friends bringing knives to school and stuff, and it was, I mean, they weren't supposed to, but
they did.
But it wasn't to threaten people. They were showing them off, or they were playing with them, things like that. And it never occurred to us that anybody would assault somebody with it. Somebody tried and kill somebody in the school, because I didn't grow up in a gang infested school. I mean, we knew there were gang problems in places, especially in the 80s, but it wasn't my reality. It wasn't the reality for a whole lot of people across the country. And after Columbine, a lot of people recognize that it could happen, but then something doesn't happen for a while, and we're human beings. You see it all the time.
Yeah.
We lose our interest. We lose our focus on that. Right after Uvalde, I did a active shooter training for like how, as a individual, how do you deal with an active shooter situation for one of my clients, and I had 70 people show up. Fast forward 3 months later, I'm doing a quarterly repetition of the class, and I had 10 people show up because there was a certain number of people that had it and felt like
out of sight, out of mind.
Right.
Absolutely.
And then nothing bad had happened. Uvalde was forgotten, the Allen Mall shooting was forgotten, and people are going on with their lives. And a lot of people like us keep those kinds of things in the forefront of our brain and worry about things like that, and most people don't.
I really do get that. And you got Gen Zers today that, granted, they weren't alive for 9/11, but I wasn't alive for the signing of the Declaration of Independence.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I wasn't alive when the Constitution was drafted.
Yeah.
So what's my excuse?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I wasn't alive. That's asinine. That is a lazy culture that's not carrying its legacy and its identity forward by grandmothers telling daughters and fathers telling sons, son, this is why we have a Marine Corps. Mm. This is why men go and sacrifice their lives. This is why the police department is essential. There's bad apples in every walk of life. We've helped arrest pastors for human trafficking. Yes, but it's taught. It's communal. This is what I told you earlier. You got to bring the community, and you are bringing the community into the conversation of making a school safe. It's not just perimeter and security, it's community, because it is day in and day out. It's an ownership issue too. And so, yes. I get it that the public could go out of sight, out of mind. But then we have federally funded organizations where it is their job, their duty, by vocation, to protect children. And then it still falls through the cracks. Mm-hmm. And now we got to get guys who are former Secret Service veterans to say, all right, what the government taught me on taxpayer dollar, they didn't apply over here. Now, after my service to the government, we're going to come and bring solutions to the government.
Yes.
Think about that circular situation, right? I'm like, and I don't know what the number is in Secret Service, but I've got a number for like SEAL Team 6, what the investment is into a SEAL Team 6 member, by the federal government. I don't know if you've got a number, but it's...
For Secret Service, it's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars to train a Secret Service agent.
It's a significant investment. There's unbelievable training. And then it's these guys post-career, like you, who say, I still want to serve. I still want to protect. And you got to come train the government on what they trained you on. And so the loop is broken. It's the ball gets dropped somewhere. It's laziness, it's oversight, it's too many moving parts. I don't know. But if you ask me, we're going to go build a nation. Who do we protect first? You got to tend to the kids. Right. Secure the perimeter. Help the elderly. So widow and the orphan. Mm-hmm. And so here we are now, solution driven. You guys are going to go do this. I would assume, and I don't want to assume, some of it is perimeter. Some of it may be technology, best practices, but prevention. So on the actual perimeter conversation, there's so much conversation. I have conversations with the NRA, with the Texas House, with congressional leaders about, one proposal is hire every veteran. They're there. They're trained. Come on, guys. And you guys do hire veterans. Mm-hmm. Give these guys a life purpose again. Come on. We've invested in them. They've given us life. Give them an opportunity. They want to serve. Then there's it's all technology. It's got to be all technology. Or, it's got to be, I've seen so many proposals. Oh, my goodness. No, it's got to be canine driven. No, it's going to be, geofencing. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah, there's a constant one-dimensional approach for
Correct.
A three-dimensional problem.
That's what I'm trying to draw out of you here.
Right.
It's not a this is not.
There's no single one thing you can do to solve it.
Absolutely.
Nothing in life works that way.
No. Mm-hmm. No, it's a complicated problem, and it requires finesse and complicated solutions that may not apply in every single area. Like one school may need a different approach than another school. If you're in a school that's already plagued by gang activity and that type of thing, then there's a whole other set of issues than if you're in a higher, a wealthier community that doesn't have that overt gang problem. And there's still gang presences in plenty of schools without that being really overt and taking over. And that's where you end up with some of the trafficking going on that you talk about, and the drugs flowing through the schools and all of that kind of stuff, because we can't pretend like the schools in the wealthier districts don't have their drug issues.
Oh, so they do.
There's a lot of things, and it takes an ability to adjust. And I think part of it, like at a legislative level, Texas has pushed out a lot of stuff to try and help with the problem. But a one size fits all solution doesn't really work. And there has to be a combination of things.
I've seen a lot of movement. Right?
Right.
But then we go to schools, we talk to kids, we train, we train on preventing trafficking from happening. And then you look at the percentage and the numbers of schools that do not have armed individuals on campus. Still.
Right.
Yep.
Still.
Even
today,
with the state mandate.
Yep.
With the state mandate, still today, with a $52 billion surplus in our education budget in Texas, the highest in the nation, and you scratch your head and you go, wait a second, what does wake up moment look like? Then really, I mean, okay, you could say, well, it's Columbine, it's Nashville, no, it's Uvalde. Right? And now all of a sudden, and then still you find, and then I find politicians on both sides, they'll say we need to make schools safe. I haven't recently run into a politician that didn't think this was a priority, right?
Right.
But man, if there's something I know about a politician, is you said it earlier, the word and action
that doesn't always marry up.
Does not marry up,
Yeah. So the Texas State University puts out a district audit report where they go and they audit every school district. And in the last district audit report, they audited 1,022 school districts, and only 6.5% of those school districts had a viable emergency operations plan, and less than 20% had a viable active shooter plan. So right there, if you just look at the data, you can see where the needs are. So there's no threat assessment team.
But Matthew, just in you saying that, I can't get to a different conclusion than gross incompetence.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or intentional neglect.
So I think competence is definitely an issue, and we're expecting school administrators and educators to have a competency in school security and
they're not going to
prevention of and violence and all these things that they do not have the background
but
for.
Then I go to the Texas State School Board. I go to the organization to keep Texas schools safe. I go to the legislators. I go to the funding earmarking, and a good leader knows where he's vulnerable, and he goes, I don't know how to do this. Get me the best guy to do this. And just the self-recognition to say, listen, guys, administrators they're not armed forces. They're not trained in the military. Some do come back and teach, but I mean, this is not the general rule. They're not going to figure this out. But this is what happens. From a State Department and from the state level, they do allocate the responsibility back to the schools and the school board, knowing that they don't know.
And not only on a state level.
Expecting different results. That's the definition of insanity. So to my point, and what I'm trying to say is the importance of an organization like yours that say, listen, we understand you all want this, but we also know you don't know how.
And we do.
And we do, and we would like to come train you. Protocol. Just simple protocol. What, when?
Yeah.
What do I do when this happens?
Yeah.
What do I do when that happens? The Nashville shooter. Doors were locked. Yeah, but your door's glass.
Yeah.
Hello?
Right.
You shoot through glass.
Yeah.
Not the barrier you thought it was. And so, yeah, but we like all those things, and yes, there's incompetence in the moments too, and this big discussion about Uvalde, was a door open and not open and all that stuff. But that's too late even then. Right? We don't let it happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's one of the things I push when I do active shooter training for just at the individual level, is in almost all of these instances, both in plans that were disrupted and in plans that were carried out, somebody knew something. People saw things, and it wasn't reported to the people who
That's
would
right.
do something about it.
That's right.
It's one of the reasons why Texas legislature and the Texas Education Authority is pushing for threat mitigation units around the state for all of these schools, that they're being required to have a threat mitigation unit, and that needs to be more recognized and more visible. If somebody comes across something that is very disturbing to them, we all kind of grew up with the don't rat somebody out, snitches get stitches kind of attitude. But this is beyond just that. I spent a career in law enforcement, and the focus of my career was in an area where we were not interested in arresting people. When you're doing a protective intelligence investigation in the Secret Service, your focus is on disrupting a potential plot, not on arresting anybody. If we could get somebody some psychological help, which trust me, I've dealt with the difficulties of trying to get somebody psychological help and had family members begging me to get them help. And our hands are tied. Local law enforcement's hands are tied. It's just there's not a good mechanism in place to get people the kind of psychiatric help that they really need. And that's part of our problem. And another part is that reticence, because I don't want to be a problem. I don't want to cause a problem to somebody else. But if somebody's doing something that is disturbing you to your core, or you see a drastic change in a kid's behavior or a coworker's behavior, or they start talking about doing violent things or they're becoming irrationally angry at things, give them the benefit of the doubt and get them some help. That's what the idea is behind threat mitigation, is to get them into diverting programs that can help them and prevent them from carrying out life-altering
No question.
things.
No question. The signs are always there. There's signals. Number one, I believe evil has to announce itself. Number one, it does. And I have never encountered a situation in anti-trafficking or law enforcement, whatever, where someone did not see something. Nothing just happens in a vacuum. There's always somebody. I mean, he bought the material from somebody.
Yeah.
Someone was like, that's kind of weird. He's been here before. And it is, but people chalk it up to, there's Boston City Marathon bomber. After the fact, they go, we went in his apartment, we saw these tubes and pipes on his kitchen table. I'm like, is that normal?
Yeah.
Like situational awareness, just a general conversation. I believe that situational awareness for the general American is practically non-existent.
Right.
From a perspective of, could they spot something in a Starbucks that doesn't belong?
And a lot of that is, I don't want to say engineered. I don't think it's intentional, but it's...
No, I don't think it's intentional.
We're so used to having our own personal screens in front of our faces.
My life, my space, my way.
Right. And I think it occurs because we are very individualistic, and because one of our big things is I don't want to bother somebody else. Now, if you're the person running around bothering somebody else, you're a Karen, or you're this, or you're that. Like, there's a balance between being too involved in everybody else's life and not paying attention to anything around you.
Honestly, frankly, not fulfilling your duty as a fellow citizen, not as biblically, not being an Ezekiel 33:7 man of God that stands as a watchman on the wall and warns of the danger. There's serious consequences for these things when we abdicate our position. If you had to abdicate post,
that would have been bad.
At another level,
right?
Like career damage, and serious and potential physical damage.
You could be the greatest investigator in the history of the Secret Service, but if you're a zero on protection, if you can't be relied on for protection, your career is pretty much done. Yeah,
and someone can get hurt.
And somebody could definitely get hurt.
Something can go really wrong, and it's too late when it happened. And so I celebrate you guys for this proactive approach into, hey, we're not here to usurp. We're not here. We need school. You do school. you teach math, science. Please stop teaching the other nonsense.
Yes.
Let's get back to STEM and let's critical thinking. But we do recognize that you need some support here. We have a common goal here. We want you safe as an educator, your wife, because it's not just the children. It's the educators. You know, that Nashville school shooting, the principal was the primary target.
Yes.
And there's history there. And again, there was history. People saw stuff.
Yeah.
People knew stuff. Law enforcement saw stuff.
Right.
And this is why that shooter wrote, I should have been stopped by now.
Yeah.
You're talking about a mentally deranged person with enough wherewithal to write, I should have been stopped by now.
Yeah. That's a big reason why they didn't want that getting out.
Of course. And we've had a behind the scenes look into that, and we know a lot. And it is diabolical, because when something like that then happens, the knee-jerk button is cover it up. And it's like, this is not, we collectively as a community society, we need to learn from this. You covering it up is putting another school in danger.
Right.
You know,
I think one of the big issues that we're facing is schools are more concerned with their CYA policy and just checking a box off so that they can feel safe. Well, we're doing what's expected of us. It's not enough, and it's not effective in the long run, but it's what's required of us. So one of the big issues right now is a lack of law enforcement officers. So school districts
everywhere.
Well, we're just short everywhere.
Yeah.
Dallas is 2,000. Houston is 3,000 PD. Just PD. Short.
Schools can't even put an officer on every campus to begin with. So in an attempt to be in compliance with House Bill 3, and on top of that, we have districts like Denton ISD that have recently gone into deficit over I think it was 1.5 million to be in compliant with House Bill 3. So these solutions that's not sustainable over time. That there has to be a long-term solution that's not only sustainable, but it's effective. And our program would be able to solve that.
Yeah. With a Texas-centric focus first, and then obviously, you know, once there's a best practice in the model, we always like to see that, you know, roll out and snap out. Is this something that you can execute on at a ISD level, you know, ISD to ISD, or even smaller school to school?
So it's up to the individual school district.
So it's the ISD.
Yeah. So
it's going to be that ISD. You know, and people don't know this, and I mean, how could they? Because they're not being told the truth. But ISD police departments answer to the superintendent of the ISD.
Right.
Yes.
We have over 100 reports of sexual abuse, sexual violence with minors. Last year alone, 2 ISD superintendents that never reported it out to outside law enforcement. And these reports came to campus police, ISD police, that then goes to the superintendent, and it dies there.
Right.
When I see data like that, that's when I call it gross negligence, or it borderlines. It's intentional, because these guys frequently meet with the city planner. They frequently meet with the city mayor. In our world here in northern Texas, they're competing for buco bucks. $68, $88 million football stadium for this ISD.
Right.
You know, notes over here, communities being developed, you know, $1 billion mile in Frisco. You know, we want to move the PGA in here. We want to move Formula One in here. You can't be telling people kids are trafficked in Frisco. This doesn't gel with the future of the city.
Yeah.
So it's a quick wink, wink, a meeting with an ISD superintendent, and numbers are fudged. 100%. We got proof. Numbers are fudged. The community doesn't know. And then all of a sudden you blink and they go, well, they got rid of a sex offender registry over here. This is why I'm saying it's community to keep the school safe. It's more than just the building and the structure in the 8 a.m. to 3 p.m.
Right. There's far more going on in schools than that. But I did not understand until we actually got together with you and started talking about the trafficking side of things. I did not understand how much was going on. I did not understand a lot of what was involved with that. And there's a certain amount of competitiveness. Yeah, okay. It can go on in Red Oak, but it can't go on in Frisco.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but you only think that because you don't understand the scale.
Correct.
You don't understand that this is happening everywhere.
Yeah.
And once you take the blinders off and are willing to admit that it's happening everywhere, maybe you get a little bit more compliance with those duty to report that even the superintendents have a duty to report.
Yeah. Whatever we do as a measure, evil has a countermeasure. It's working on a countermeasure. And we will. We talk to pimps that are arrested and traffickers and Johns, the buyers that are arrested. And they'll go, they watch policy. We had a trafficker read the girls that he was trafficking the law. Read them the law. And say, here's the law. This is why I won't go to jail. This is why your voice doesn't matter. This is brazen. It's not even. So then when you have a school district that go, we don't report. But he as a trafficker he knows they're trafficking in Frisco.
Right.
He knows because he's doing it. And he goes, they're issuing it. It's like, boys, this is a playground. Come on. And it's an invitation almost. Versus, I'll never forget, we were doing an event in the entertainment business in Nashville, Tennessee. Nashville has a thing every year called Fanfare. And it's when all the top country stars are in Nashville. They're on Broadway, Lower Broad, 2nd Avenue, and there's stages everywhere. I mean, it's everywhere. About 1 million people roll in for a week. And it's concert on concert on concert. It is a bad law enforcement situation. There's a lot of alcohol. There's people who think it's Vegas. They bring their stuff. They bring their demons out the closet and all their different personalities. It's just not good. And it's packed shoulder to shoulder. It's in the street. And Nashville, you're second fiddle, then you're in Tootsies. I mean, it's back to back to back. And it's not a good situation. 1 year, things go real bad. And when it goes bad in an environment like that, it's chaos.
Right.
The roads are blocked off. You can't get to them. The next year, and it went really, really bad. Okay. This is the year Steve McNair got shot. The quarterback of the Titans got shot by a lover, shot in his heart same year. The next year, we're downtown for the same event, and I'm part of the entertainment world, and we're doing events. And all of a sudden, all the cops are on horseback. The whole city. You cannot miss them. Where the previous year, you couldn't find a cop. They were there, but you couldn't in the crowd, you couldn't find the cop. The next year, these dudes look like they're on Clydesdales. I mean, they're on 18-hand horses, and crime went through the floor
right
that year because the presence was there.
Yeah.
Right.
What a concept.
Someone's watching, like just take the guy from his feet, put him on a horse. And they were just sitting on the horse. It wasn't even, they weren't bullhorning. It was just, they're watching. I see him. Crime goes down. Not a shot fired. Nothing. No aggression. No tear gas, rubber bullets. Just visibility.
Yeah.
And that tells us something about why schools should have armed officers.
Yes.
Trained officers. Visibility. You go to a guy's yard and it says protected by ADT. He's messaging.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, hey, it works.
It's going to be a little bit more difficult to get into this place.
And they're looking for low bar entry.
Yep.
Right.
Lowest common denominator.
Path of least resistance.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Where do I break in? But it's so simple and it works. And then we get to schools and it's not there.
Right. Because we want our schools to look safe and friendly.
But that's the thing. We don't. And I've heard that. We don't want this presence here because we look unsafe. I'm like, no, the opposite happens.
Yeah.
Right.
Did you see? Rebecca, can you pull up? It's a group of African American fathers. Maybe we don't have time today to pull it up, but check it out. The audience, check it out. There's a group of African American fathers that just decided to go into a school and just be on the halls of the school for class.
I did see that.
Red shirts. I think they wore red shirts.
Yeah.
The presence. And then the boys, their sons would say, man, we don't have fights at school. The teachers were saying, hey, much less, disobedience, just present. So where can people find you if you want them to find you? How can people support you?
So they can go to allegianceproject.org, allegianceproject.org. They can reach out to us directly at info@allegianceproject.org. You can find Steve. You can find Checkmate Training Group. All of our guys in the training department with links to their websites in the About Us page. So everything is there. Our biggest need are supporters. Okay. We need volunteers. We need funding because every time we have this conversation, even with concerned parents, there's this almost sigh of relief where, oh, good, someone's doing that. And
well, as society, we want that. We want a guy to go to the White House and solve family problems. No, not gonna happen.
But then they don't think, okay, well, they can't do that if there isn't support from the community. No, and that's the whole basis.
I get back to it's communal. Guys, thank you so much for being on the bottom line. We appreciate you very much.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate the time.
We'll learn how to support you more.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
God
Thank
bless
you.
Thank
God
you
bless
so
you.
much. Bye.
Right.